Hello and welcome to episode 309 of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason, and I'm once again by good friend of the show, Fred. How's it going today, Fred?
Going great. How are you, Jason?
I'm good. I didn't expect NFL news today, but the NFL offseason is working. Jalen Ramsey, for only a third round pick, and Hunter Long, who you seem to know who he was when we talked off air. I was unfamiliar with his work. That got you Jalen Ramsey in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, as we've established, being a New England fan, not the news that I wanted to hear. I think, especially coming off of the heels of something we'll get into later with the Panthers and Bears trade. This is like something that really seems like a good deal for Miami. They didn't give up the house
No.
for one of the best corners in the league, and it really puts them in a good spot to continue to be competitive with, the Bills, who are probably going to be at the top of that division, who are known for their passing game, right? It's all Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis from game to game. But, this really puts Miami in a position to be able to defend Buffalo at a level that they haven't been able to defend. Ramsey's a game changer, I think.
And you already have Zayvon Howard on the other side, who's on their Pro Bowl corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of this trade was about accepting all that money because Jalen Ramsey is owed a lot of money over the next 2 years. So it wasn't as simple as like you're getting this Pro Bowl player, give us picks. But I mean, the talk was at least a 1. And, apparently no other team was going to pony up more than a 3. Because I don't know what Hunter Long's long-term possibility is. No pun intended with the name thing. But he doesn't strike me as somebody that, might not even make the roster. He's not a number 1 tight end, let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, he came out, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, he got drafted middle round. Coming out, he was like the third or fourth, best tight end for that year.
Yeah.
And really hasn't been able to move up. I mean, Miami's been running, I think Smythe has been their second tight end behind Gesicki.
Yeah.
He can't even, beat up the Smythe guy. So, yeah, I think that, there's definitely some limitations as to what this guy can do. So, almost like a throw-in pick. Like, maybe you can, turn this guy into a serviceable, weapon on offense. But good luck with that. For him to be part of it and only be a third-round pick, and to your point, like, the money is great, but Miami's got a young team, so now's the time for them to suck up some big contracts. They can do it because of the general youth of their team, so I think this is a really good spot for them.
Now, I know he's tweeted how he was busy taking care of his daughter's kitten, but, Rich Eisen and a number of NFL sources have said that Tom Brady and Miami still have a love connection. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's always going to be there, right? Because Brady's got and the owner have the ties into Michigan. That's what brought them together, and that's why everybody felt like there was going to be like this kind of marriage down the line, everything like that. I still, the killer is that there's going to be these stories out there until week 10 of even later maybe. I mean, there was talk of Odell joining Kansas City for the Super Bowl, right? So, all next season, every week there's going to be talk about whether or not Brady's coming back. But I really genuinely believe that he's done. I was skeptical the first time he retired, but this time I'm just of the mindset like that's not going to happen. And I think as enticing as it would be, his involvement would be at an ownership level at this point in time. Am I just from what I'm thinking? Because I think he just wants to move on to a different part of his life and be not so stuck in what is required for an NFL player in terms of that daily grind and everything like that.
Well, I pre-apologize for going all Stephen A. ESPN on you right now. But, Brady initially, obviously, he filed the letter, and it was sort of like a definitive, like, no, this time I'm retired for real. But in the midst of this last 2 weeks of speculation, and again, it could just be his PR team is like, look, we just want to keep your name out there constantly. I know you're not going to go in the booth this year. You got other stuff on your mind, but we just want to make sure that people are always talking Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady, which I understand that's, marketing 101 for any person. Like, as long as they're talking about you, you're still in the public mind space, and that's what all that matters. But he didn't, when all the speculation came out this week, his response was, have you guys ever taken care of a kitten? I'm just trying to take care of my little girl's kitten. Like, it wasn't, no, I'm not playing football again this year. It was, kids are tough. And I just,
Well,
again, I don't know if that's...
We all know that the only reason he's keeping it open is so he can sign that one-day contract with the Patriots and retire a Patriot. Like, that's the whole gist of all of this.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, but, Miami is a Super Bowl ready team where you get to throw to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And the quarterback in place, who we talked about off air, like, we're both slightly uncomfortable watching Tua on the field at this point. Not that you want somebody to stop doing what they love, but, you look at Byron Jones, a fellow Miami Dolphin player that says he can't jump or run anymore. And, all the different head stuff and concussion stuff. And the Tua stuff last year was really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And again, it didn't make us stop watching.
It is a ready-made team. I agree with you. I think if there's going to be a destination, it's going to be tough to find a more attractive one than that.
Well, the crazy thing is the two probably most attractive, most quarterback-needy spots are the two most Brady spots ever, which would be Miami and San Francisco. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are two teams where it's like you get to come in with Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle with Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco in that defense. Or you can go to Miami with the fastest offense in football and an even better defense now. And those are the two spots that have the most question marks for contenders at quarterback. And then seemingly, are two places that Brady has legitimate, familiar or has always been tied to those organizations. So, like you said, I don't think... Unless he comes out and says, I am never playing football again, or he's, caught doing something awful. We got another season of, will Brady come back? Will Brady come back?
Right. The one thing I will say is that both those situations were the exact same that they were when he announced his retirement. So if there really was an interest in either one of those spots, I don't see why he would have been so quick to, go and announce his retirement. It didn't change anything. He didn't have any years left on his contract, so he didn't have any affiliation. He didn't have to stay with the Bucs or anything like that. He could have just looked at it and been like, you know what? I'm just going to wait to see my options, because if one of these two became doable, I'm definitely going there. Like, you know what I mean? They were as attractive then when he made his retirement decision.
It's true, but let me give you a TMZ level crappy journalism conspiracy theory now. I'll just continue mimicking the bad reporting in the world. His ex-wife, Gisele Bundchen, she's been putting out a lot of social media pictures lately of herself looking very attractive in just a flat out, we'll just say that she's a very attractive young woman, 40-year-old woman, whatever she is. So maybe he's like, I'm going to retire. I'll play with the kids, play with the cat, see if Gisele wants to come back. If it's still a no, I'm going back to football. That's my TMZ reporting.
That's not I have a hard time arguing with that. Like, I mean, that's kind of a good play on his part, right? Like, leverage that, because I'm assuming that things are probably pretty good with Gisele.
Yeah.
So if that can get worked out again, yeah, all right. That one's got me there. I think that's actually, in terms of shady reporting, I think that's probably the story I would probably most believe.
And again, my source on both of those, in case anybody really feels like I have any real sources, was just my imagination. So, and keep in mind, we do write for a living, so, make up a lot of stories.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one the best. But I still got to go with my gut, which tells me that he's done.
All right, well, in more positive football news for Chicago fans, we love the Bears trade, right?
Yeah, the first time that the Bears have knocked it out of the park since I've been paying attention to football.
For anyone that hasn't been paying attention, the Bears had the number 1 overall pick, which they have already traded. They traded to the Carolina Panthers for the number 9 pick in the draft, their first round pick next year, the 2020 a second round pick this year, a second round pick in 2025, and DJ Moore, who somehow has 4 1,000 yard seasons despite playing in Carolina. So I think if you're the Bears, you just won. Because like we talked about offline, there's a good chance that first round pick next year from Carolina could be in the top 5 when you have Caleb Williams and some other quarterbacks coming out. I don't think any of the quarterbacks this year are any higher rated than Justin Fields is currently. And you've got $95 million in cap space. You got guys like Orlando Brown out there. You traded for Claypool. You got Mooney. You bring in DJ Moore. You beef up that offensive line. And you give Justin Fields a real shot. And if not, you're in a great position next year. And then for this year's draft, you move down from 1 to 9. And we can speculate that all 4 quarterbacks are going to be gone. Will Anderson's going to be gone. So that's 5 players for sure. We assume that the Jalen Carter stuff, it'll depend on how teams are scared. But I think some of their decision on might have been Jalen Carter. You know, the more the stuff comes out, it wasn't just the racing. He's got some other character things going on. That maybe the Bears were like, look, we don't even, we're not worried about staying in the top 5 to guarantee we get one of those those 2 defenders. Now we can sit back, maybe take the best tackle on the board, maybe take a great cornerback. Who knows what they're going to do. Maybe pair him with Bijan Robinson and go way off the board and go real crazy and make people angry at them for taking a running back in the top 10. But, those are my thoughts. Like I said, I think they knocked it out of the park. Because like I said, I think they traded to get a future first-round pick from the team that might be the absolute worst team in the league next year.
Yeah, and I think we would both agree that you picking at 9 to get a top 10 guy you're going to be able to pick the pick of the litter at the spot that you have that you feel that you have the greatest need at. I think, again, offensive line, if you get like the top graded lineman or, one of the 3 top graded linemen to go with, you feel like you've done a great job, right?
Yeah.
Plus 2, if they're not the first pick of the draft, the level of pressure the change in the level of pressure or expectation from pick 1 to pick 2 is like mind-boggling, right? So you bring in a guy, you're still getting a top-level guy, top 10 guy overall, and he can develop. It's not going to be like the end of the world if he has if he has a rough preseason. Whereas, whoever you picked at 1, if he wasn't stellar from the time that he stepped on the field, it's getting written about, doubted, all sorts of crap. So you take that. Set your guy up, whoever that guy is going to be at 9, set him up for success just in terms of like the out the field stuff, and then still be able to pair him with, teammate wise with, 4 other dudes over the next couple of years that are going to be, high level dudes, and DJ Moore. I'm feeling like this is amazing. It actually kind of stands out to me almost like the way the Marlins ran their franchise forever, where they were like, we're going to suck for 10 years, and then we're going to have this amazing season, and then we're going to sell everybody and suck again for the next 10 years, and then we're going to have an amazing season, win the World Series, that kind of thing. This is like the Bears almost have deserved this after, 15, 20 years of just being like making a lot of, bad moves.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, I like Justin Fields, too. I didn't think any of these... he's only been in the league 2 years. He hasn't had much help on offense. I wanted to see him get one more year, too.
Definitely a kid that I root for. And I don't even really like Ohio State, but he just seems like a quality kid. And I'm not a fan of anybody getting, kind of like being the scapegoat.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you can say that what he's been doing, like there's really... for a young quarterback, like he's developed, and he's already on his second coach, going into his 3rd year. Like, there's a lot that you can speak to.
Yeah.
That he's had to work through and work against. And yeah, I agree with you. Like he deserves an opportunity to show what he can do with some level of stability, with some supporting cast around him. I think he can be really, really good, and I do think that this move puts the Bears in a spot of being competitive in what is overall kind of a weaker division.
Well, look at their own division. Aaron Rodgers is pretty much already a New York Jet at this point. So, do you
Hmm.
believe in Jordan Love and the Packers? Detroit's a wonderful story, and if I was picking a team to win that division next year, I'd pick the Green Bay or I'd pick the Detroit Lions. But
Same.
Minnesota's on the decline, and the Bears have, like I said, almost 90 million in cap space, a bunch of draft picks. Hopefully, they've stabilized their offense a little bit, and if Justin Fields makes a leap, there's no reason they couldn't be the winner of that division this year.
Agreed. And Everflus, is that the coach's name?
That sounds right.
All I've heard about him is that he's like a culture building guy,
Yeah.
and my position in my real life job, in a position of leadership, and I lead culture change. It takes, from an NFL calendar standpoint, it's going to take a full season at the very least just to get the foundation of what you're all about into the locker room. So, him having that first year to kind of really establish what the norms, the routines, the expectations for all those players are. Now bringing in some of his guys, some younger guys who don't know anything different other than what he's teaching them, like they are definitely primed to make a big jump. And I agree. I definitely think, I actually put like $75 in Vegas on Detroit to win that division last year. Hadn't expected Minnesota to just win so many, one-score games. But I definitely don't see them repeating that. And I think that the division is going to probably come down to Detroit and Chicago, which is crazy because last year both those teams, going into last year, had no expectations. Most people had no expectations for either one of those teams.
I think that's what the NFL has over every other league is that, there really is hope for every team. Like, come draft season and the off season, every team's like, you know what? Just make, and that's in a sport that has Patrick Mahomes and some of these other guys. So, where you don't feel like you should have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, there was always one or two teams that you're like, okay, they're still going to suck no matter what. But name me those teams. Maybe Atlanta it might have the least amount of like buzz, but you could say like, hey, listen, they do a couple things, and maybe, and I'm blanking on the guy's name from Cincinnati, the quarterback that
Joe Burrow, yeah.
No.
Oh.
Went to college at Cincinnati. They drafted Atlanta.
Oh, Desmond Ritter, yeah.
Um,
Ritter.
But
yeah,
I mean, but he maybe he all of a sudden like jumps leaps and bounds. Like that's best case scenario for Atlanta. But like they're one of the teams that I think has the least amount of buzz. But to your point, you could make an argument even for the Texans with all the draft capital that they have and some of the young guys. Like there's a ton of excitement for each one of these teams in the offseason.
There is, and I guess I know we've talked NFL for like 15 minutes, but we can't not talk Lamar Jackson. And for some reason, I had completely blocked it out of my mind, and then it was like, oh yeah. The only thing I'll say about that is, I think the NFL players should have guaranteed contracts. We look at what happens to their long-term health, and I know the reason that people are not wanting to sign Lamar Jackson is he wants to start a trend following up after, Deshaun Watson getting guaranteed money. And again, once Deshaun Watson gets it, Lamar Jackson gets it, then every NFL quarterback is going to want it, and then left tackles, and then corners and edge rushers, and all of a sudden your kicker gets a guaranteed deal, which is what it should be, because the NFL is a billion trillion dollar a year industry, and they can afford to make sure their players are played safely. But I don't know what the NFL owners were thinking, Atlanta specifically. You hear you can negotiate with Lamar Jackson for 2 first-round picks, and you automatically say we're out. Was there a need to say that?
Yeah, I don't get that at all because Lamar would be such a significant upgrade, and I don't know if it was just a conversation between you and I, or if I had mentioned it one of the times that I was lucky enough to be on the show with you. But the thing that scares me the most as a fan of this way is the notion that Lamar could go and sign with Miami, right? Like he makes 60%, 20 out of 30 teams. He makes them better.
Yeah.
And, I personally think that the negotiation piece, like just not being in it, the fact of the matter is he's serving as his agent. His mom's serving as his agent. Like, it's different, right?
It's different.
So, I had heard some people kind of talk about, what Baltimore is going to be doing is being disrespectful to Lamar. I personally think that that's kind of crazy. Anytime somebody's getting offered $40+ million, I don't see that being disrespectful. Plus, there's the fact that we don't know. Like, Lamar very well could have been like, "Listen, you guys aren't going to give me what I want. At least give me the option, or if there's another team that will, that they can." It's not a typical thing that an agent would look for, but at the same time, this is not a typical negotiation. So it hasn't been said, but we don't know if that's what they wanted. So I think this whole situation, what I do know about it, it clearly has the potential, in my opinion, to just blow up the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, there's already been players that have been very outspoken about not being happy with the way the front office is treating Lamar. And, I think that's probably the most damning part of all of this for that franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that, if you're Lamar Jackson, you're a good guy, you're an MVP, you're good for your team, good for your community, and in your same division, a guy with 23 sexual assault charges against him got a fully guaranteed contract. And he wants a guaranteed he wants a guaranteed contract. The NFL does not want to give out any more guaranteed contracts to anybody ever. Peyton Manning never got one. Tom Brady, that's the Pandora's box they do not want to let creep open any more than it already has. But I think if you're the NFL and you are secretly colluding behind the scenes, which I don't have any problem saying, I think that's what's happening.
Yes.
I think the worst way to do it is to have terrible teams with bad quarterbacks come out and say we're not interested, because that just makes no sense. Like, I mean, Carolina just gave up 2 first-round picks, DJ Moore, and 2 second-round picks for the chance to draft a guy we don't even know if he's going to be, starter level. So you're telling me I can negotiate with a 26-year-old NFL MVP who's gone to the playoffs a bunch of times, and all I have to give up is 2 first-round, and I have to pay him. I'm not pretending the money is not on the table, but again, if the Chiefs came out and were like, we're not going to negotiate, the Bills, the Chargers, you get on lists, even the Eagles with Jalen Hurts, like, there's teams that could be like, no, we're not interested in Lamar, but the Washington Commanders, the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons should not be amongst those teams. Like,
yeah, completely agree. I mean, I would love if he went to the Patriots, but I know that's not. They're not. Their calculus would not ever allow them to pay anybody that amount of money, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like, he makes so many teams better, and for teams to just kind of be, approaching it the way they are, there clearly is more than just a team-by-team decision-making process going on. I completely agree.
I mean, guaranteed contracts would be hundreds of millions of dollars per season that the owners would be paying, as opposed to saving by, signing a play, like the Derek Carr contract. People are like, oh my God, he got 4, and it's like, or the Daniel Jones contract. It's like, he really got a 2-year deal for like $60 million. He didn't get a 4-year, $160 million contract. They're like, but that was fully guaranteed. Daniel Jones would not have gotten that contract. And it's like, what can you do? NBA, not a lot has changed other than that, the Los Angeles Lakers are now firmly in 9th, and even without LeBron James, they're looking pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, AD's been playing out of his mind, and it seems like the additions they made at the trade deadline are working out. It certainly seems like they could, and it's such a tight cluster too, in that, 5 to 10, really 4 to 10 range.
Yeah.
They go on a streak where they win 5 out of 7. They could be out of the play-in and even at the 6th spot. It's crazy.
I mean, Kevin Durant is now out probably the regular season with that slippy injury on his ankle. I think it's the Nuggets, the Kings, and you assume Memphis will probably hold it together. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They're probably not going to drop out of a top 6. But I mean, the Lakers are 3 games back of they're 4 games back of the 4 seed. Which is, and if Anthony Davis, I mean, it's always been Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis, they're a playoff team.
Yes.
but that means him staying on the field or field for the court, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is a challenge to both, I guess, NBA pundits and writers, and then I guess technically our belittled school system in America. But when you take like a comprehend like a reading comparison class, right? When you're comparing comparative literature,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to compare two books without shitting on one of the two books. And I feel like we need to somehow. I know it's probably not as good for ratings, but find a way, like, because the NBA stuff has been with the NBA, it's just been kind of like for the last 4 years, Embiid has been a top 5 player. Giannis has been a top 5 player. Jokic has been a top 5 player. They're all putting up absolutely insane numbers on really good foot teams. Like, you should be able to make your case without, resorting to crapping all over the other person. Like, we need to find it, to become a much more articulate, more well-read, more spoken society where we can, give somebody their flowers without, shoving fertilizer on top of the other people, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and it's a perfect analogy, and it just kind of highlights and maybe is kind of like the next evolution from a topic we were discussing last week, which was that how the media has really been working to direct the narrative and try to get us all to think that like we all have to just be arguing about things or like, hey, click on these things that are going to be sensational or make you have some kind of crazy reaction as opposed to just like being logical and starting to say like really kind of attacking that fandom and trying to push it to an extreme.
It doesn't need help.
Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't need any help. There's plenty. Like you just said, there's plenty of fandom. We have plenty of trash talk. We don't need to result to anything else.
Yeah, I mean because it's not far off for us to get pushed to that as fans in general, like all of us collectively, to get pushed to that point where we're suddenly like the New England the England soccer fans who are causing these crazy riots and people are getting killed. Like, we don't need to get pushed to that point. And I think what you highlight is like one of the small little nuances that move. That's just another piece of Velcro that gets us closer and closer to that place. And finding that ability to pull back and be like, hey, listen, let's just look at this analytically. We're not saying that any one of these guys are bad players. They're top-notch, top 3 players in the league. But we all have a flavor we like. And I like this guy a little bit more because, you're right. It's not as entertaining in some circles, but, for educated and well thought out, individuals who like sports, that's a great way to approach it.
Yeah. That was all my NBA talk for this week. I don't really have anything else unless you had other NBA stuff.
Yeah, I'm still flabbergasted by the fact that the Mavericks and the Timberwolves have the same record. Like, that boggles my mind with all the talk about, like, the Mavs. And even with the addition of Kyrie, like, they should be winning more games than losing, and it's been the opposite way since he's come here, right? But the part that I'm starting to get excited about now that we're getting towards the end of the season is what some of these matchups look like.
Yeah.
Playoff matchups. Phoenix playing either Golden State or LA. If things, again, obviously a lot of things can change, but like, I think either one of those series would be phenomenal. And, even like Knicks 76ers.
Yeah.
I think that would be like a 7-game series, like drag out like the old kind of Big East kind of games that would be just really enjoyable to watch. So I'm starting to look at that now that the picture's getting a little bit clearer. What do we got? Maybe like 15 games in the regular season, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that I'm starting to get really excited about with the NBA.
Well, I would say, and maybe this is just, past bias concern, but like, if I was the Nuggets and the Kings, I don't think I'd want to see the Lakers anywhere near that first round. I don't want to play an angry LeBron coming back, getting every foul call, a healthy AD, and the rest of that team. I'd much rather they moved up and ended up taking out Memphis or Phoenix if I'm them.
I agree. Like, if you're Nuggets and Kings, and you're like, or especially Nuggets because they've been at one for a while. But like, if you're one of those teams that's sitting at the top of the Western Conference, you're like, hey, listen, we should coast into the second round, right? Because we're the 1 and 2 seeds.
Yeah.
So we're playing the guys from the play-in, and you end up with either the Lakers or the Mavericks. You're like, how does this math work?
Yeah, I'd be fine against the like the Mavs, the Wolves, the Jazz, the Pelicans, the Thunder, and I guess the Blazers. And I guess you got to put I've said the Jazz because they're still technically in it. But like of the teams that are in the play-in at this point, the Lakers would be the team I would not want to see. I mean, they've got something going, and LeBron in the playoffs is just a different beast. So, whereas in the East, if I'm the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, like I don't care if it's the Heat. I mean, like, the Heat would be the one team I probably wouldn't want to see, but I'm not really worried about Atlanta, Chicago, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Raptors. Like none of those teams would concern me. And the Heat would be based more on what the Heat have been over the just the fact that the Heat are still just a well-run, oiled culture machine.
Yeah, I agreed. I think the Heat would be the one team that you would like know that you're going to get a series out of that group. And it is interesting too, right? Like, I mean, there's been talk all year long, most of the year, about how the Bucks and the Celtics are the two best teams in basketball. It's going to be one of those two guys winning the playoffs. But then, like you said, you just spouted off the 6 through 11 or 12 in the West, and all those teams are scary.
Yeah, in their own way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pelicans are in a bad spot with Zion once again. We talked about him before, but he's out again for a while. So, and I wouldn't worry about Oklahoma City too much, or the Jazz. But like you said, the Timberwolves, the Mavs, and the Lakers, those are all kind of scary. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, any of those teams could win multiple series in the playoffs. No question about it.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And then I promise for next week I will start paying attention to the men's the basketball tournaments, the NCAA tournaments, because I've not done a good job with that so far.
Yep, big, exciting weekend as brackets come out at the end of the weekend. It's always that's a really exciting time.
Yeah,
and people are always going to be putting their brackets together, expecting someday somebody will have a perfect bracket, but it will never happen. And I think the one thing that's exciting about college basketball this year, and it was the case last year, no dominant teams. So it's going to be a lot of fun upsets, and it's probably not going to be 4-1s in the Final Four. So it's a lot of excitement.
Yeah. Yeah, this year I would be like that person at work that fills out based on their favorite color of each uniform. I mean, obviously, I could read I know who's favored and who's not favored, and I could do some research and articles. But I've watched such little college basketball this year that my picks would just be, besides the fact that it's a very wide open one, I would be like, I have no idea. I'm like, I like this mascot better than that mascot, or which mascot would win in a fight, and I'll pick that team. And I think I might do just as well.
That's a good way to go. I think you got to put a bracket in. With that being said,
it's always felt like a pretty solid one. Yeah. Do you have any other topics you want to talk about before we get to our random fun stuff at the end?
Well, I don't know if you want to touch on the point about the WWE looking at.
Oh my God, I totally forgot that. Yeah. I can't remember where that article was. My dad sent it to me for the show, and then I sent it to you. But for those who are unfamiliar, the WWE and I guess AEW and all professional wrestling would be included in this. While I think they're incredible athletes and they're amazing stunt people, like they are fixed matches, so we know who's going to win going in. They're trying to come on legal gambling sites. You can bet who will win a WWE match, which seems kind of insane for a predetermined event, right?
Yeah, I think. The initial reaction is that, like, this is just insane.
Yeah.
It's one of those deals where you're just like, okay, where is our responsibility in terms of protecting people from themselves? That's the biggest challenge I think for us as a society is like we're trying to do the right thing, but you know what? If people are dumb enough to bet on something that has a fixed outcome, then I guess that should be their decision. The one side of it that I hadn't really considered because my initial reaction was just like, absolutely not. That's the craziest,
Of course, yeah.
thing that I've ever heard of. But somebody mentioned, and now, the sports books have become just in the last couple of days legalized in Massachusetts. So kind of looking at how all of that stuff works, and I was surprised that I could put in a bet on the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
And that was one of the arguments that was laid out as to why this is acceptable. The Academy Awards is a known outcome before it's announced. Yet you could still bet tens of thousands of dollars as to who's going to win Best Picture. And there is a handful of people who know what the outcome is before it's announced, right?
It's true.
The wrestling groups are making the claim that they would approach it the same way, which doesn't really make sense because don't these guys like rehearse for like weeks ahead of time? And
no, not with wrestling, because wrestling they're doing house shows every week and moving around, so it's more just like they talk backstage, and then it's like this is how we're gonna go. And they call the match as they go. I was a big wrestling fan for a while, so just whenever you see them in headlocks and things like that, they're just talking about what they're gonna do next.
Really, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, because they play off the crowd, and then and things along those lines. And sometimes the ref has an earpiece in the ear, and someone in the back, the producer, will call and be like, this spot's not going to work. Let's go with this. Let's go with that. And like the Academy Awards, I thought about you can bet on the color Gatorade, and clearly somebody knows what color Gatorade's going to be in the Super Bowl bucket, right? It's not like it's a mystery bucket. They don't have like 10 buckets and they randomly grab one. They rehearse, how long they rehearse. The national anthem isn't live, right?
Right.
So somebody knows if that's going to go under or over before it actually happens. I guess with the Academy Awards, I feel like it's less likely. Like if all the money this year was on everywhere all at once, right? And Vegas found out about it and they called Hollywood and they were like, "Hey, pick Tar. We got to save some money." That seems less likely than, "Hey, can Roman Reigns lose tonight? Is that cool?" Because again, there's three televised WWE shows every week, and there's like 5 house shows every week. So it's like it feels less invested to have somebody lose if you needed somebody to lose. Not that I'm saying Vegas would do that, but it. And like you said, I don't know if you can protect people from each other, themselves.
Right.
And if people want to...
And that's the killer is because, I think in terms of being a sports fan, what you most value is the fact that nobody knows what the outcome is. These teams and these players are going to go out there and do everything that they can to win. And we all buy into that concept. When people start to question somebody's desire to win or their work ethic and things like that, it really affects like whether or not it's a team or an individual you even root for. If you're a true sports fan, in most cases.
Yeah.
And I think, and even in that arena, there's been things that have come about where there's been questions like the issues with the referee from the NBA from, 7-10 years ago, where, it was found that he was kind of involved in trying to alter the outcome of the game or make sure the point spread didn't get covered, that kind of thing. It was really damning to the league, even though he's got a small piece to play in it. Now, if we're talking about like, hey, listen, the actual outcome is officially being decided by this other individual who might then have an opportunity to tell someone to go and put this $100,000 bet. There's just that opportunity for it to just feel dirty and dangerous, and that's the part that I don't know how you ever take that out, regardless of what steps they were put in place to try to minimize that. It doesn't change the fact that there's still somebody who knows.
And wrestling, wrestling is famous for shenanigans, right? A low blow when the ref's not looking, Your manager and distracts the ref, and then you cheat to win. Your foot's on the rope, and the referee didn't see that your foot was on the rope, and that's why you got the pin. How do you deal with those? Does that still count as a win? Is it just like? Because I know if there are significant shenanigans in football or basketball, like sometimes Vegas will just call off the bet. I know it's pretty rare that would happen, but like I said, wrestling is built on shenanigans. So it'd be like, well, he won, yeah, but he cheated, and we all watched him cheat. So do I lose my money?
Right.
And they're like, well, it was scripted cheating, so he didn't really cheat. It's like I don't know how that goes. It just seems like I don't know how that works. But it'll be interesting to see.
It will. I think that it's one of those things that it could have the potential to reduce, or it could have the potential to really have some bad ramifications for others, for sports leagues. The WWE doesn't consider themselves a sports league, so I reference it as different. But it could have a negative impact on sports leagues.
Yeah. I would even think if I'm the gambling site. Like, I know we have a disease of more in this country where you just want more and more and more no matter how much you have. And I'm sure it's the same with them and money. And I can't imagine they're not making money hand over fist gambling on everything they're already gambling on. But I would feel like for the integrity of my site, I'm not sure I'd want to handle WWE as a client. Like, I know I'd be turning away money, which is stupid. That's not what business is. But, part of me would worry if it was worth the headache. Like, I feel like enough people are betting on cricket and baseball and lacrosse and everything else you can bet on that site that, we don't really need one more thing to bet on, I guess would be my thing. But I know companies are never going to turn away money. So what can you do?
Yeah, it is true.
Well, now's the time where we talk about food and arty stuff. Did you have any interesting meals that calling out?
Well, no, you go first with the entertainment and food stuff.
All right. I think sadly I've been pretty boring. I had Z's Pizza again, which I've mentioned on the show before, but now that Polly G's has gone out of business down here, Z's I think is them and Pizza Delicious. That's pretty much where you need to be if you're in New Orleans. If you haven't had Z's Pizza, it's Zee. And it's important because there are some weird pizza names down here. But Z's on Barone Street. They don't sponsor the show. They've never given me free pizza, but I think their pizza is that good that I've mentioned it more than once. So there. And as far as entertainment goes, I don't think I have anything, sadly. I watched a bunch of Mediocrity, sadly. And a lot of old Office episodes, because we're kind of running through that again. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I take that back. I watched on Peacock. It's the death of Robert, I want to say Woon. It's Wune. It was about a lawyer in D.C. It's 2 episodes. And I'll forewarn people that we don't really have... there's not a solution. They still don't know who did it. But when you watch this thing, it's so fascinating. And I don't want to give any of it away, but it's only 2 hours of your life, and it's an insane story. They went to trial. Nobody got convicted on conspiracy because they couldn't even get murder. But when you see all the stuff that went into this, it's just so crazy. And it's a really intriguing story. And I'd love to see it solved.
Can I ask what the gentleman who was killed, what he did before he was killed?
Well, I'll give the general premise. So basically, he was an Asian civil rights lawyer. He had a light. He lived like an hour and a half outside of D.C. with his wife. He had to meet on a Zoom at work like at 10 o'clock at night. So he called these 3 friends he has. And he said, can I just crash at your place? Because I'm going to be getting out at midnight. I've got to be back at the office at 7. So can I sleep at your house? They, of course, say yes, right? Nice people. Makes sense. Everything seems to work. He arrives at the house at 10:29. There's a call at 11:19. Or no, 11:49. Because it's 79 minutes he's in the house. They find him stabbed to death. Nobody in the house. The other 3 people say they have no idea what happens. None of them know what happened. and that's pretty much where we're at as a story. And then there's a lot of other crazy little, when you see, you've got to see like the diagram of the house and everything else, but it's just, it doesn't make sense on any level. And just in case you were curious, because if you're a true crime fan, did the cops screw up? Of course they did. But did they let?
I'm fascinated by that stuff, so I will definitely be pulling that one up.
Yeah, it's because like I think no matter what conclusion you come to, you're left with these other questions, and you just keep wanting to talk about it, which I think is I can't believe I almost forgot. But that was my entertainment moment. But it's on Peacock, and it's the death of Robert Woon. It should be in the top new release section. It's totally worth it. So that was that.
All right. Food wise for us, I finally brought my wife to this place down the road, Treehouse Brewery. It's real. They've been around for a few years, a couple different spots in Massachusetts. They reopened a spot up here in Western Massachusetts, which is just like amazing. It's this huge building. Used to be very different, a manufacturer, like a company that manufactured the little pamphlets that you would get about like how to fill out your voter registration thing. Like, the little cloudy people were always on it and stuff. People have probably seen them before, but that business went out of, or a company went out of business, and left this amazing building, which Treehouse Brewery is now taking over. And their CEO is hell-bent on producing the best pizza in the world.
Oh.
And they come pretty damn close. Just a few flavors, or a few options to choose from, so it's
the way it should be.
Their whole notion is like, we're not going to have many, but we're going to do them great. And it's amazing, and the beers are really, really good, really good.
Very nice. Now I have another place I need to visit, so that's perfect.
Yep, right down the road in South Deerfield, Massachusetts. And entertainment. Two things that I've seen on Netflix recently. One has been on there for some time, but if you've never watched any of the new version of the David Letterman interviews, I think the official name of the program is My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. They're really awesome interviews, and they're you never know who's going to be on it next. And he had a Durant on one of them, and it was really interesting in terms of just getting some insight to who he is as an individual. We hear the stories about him, buying burner phones and just throwing stuff on social media to, either silently defend himself or, do some of these other things. I found it really telling. And I'd be curious what you would think if it's something that you haven't yet watched.
I have not yet watched it, but I like Kevin Durant's an interesting interview. I'll give him that. Besides being a really good basketball player, obviously.
Yep. And then the other thing that we just saw pop up is, and I don't know the name of it, but if you search for, it's about the Malaysian air flight that just disappeared into the sky.
Yeah, we saw that. We didn't watch the video yet. We put it in our queue, as they say.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing, because we watched like the 5-minute little intro, and it just seems fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and that kind of stuff. Much like the murder mystery you were talking about, where there's just so many unanswered questions. Like that stuff is, and maybe that speaks to the writer in us, but like that sort of stuff just like always grabs me. So those are two things. One, the Durant thing, which is interesting if you haven't watched it, and two, the Malaysian Air, which I have to watch.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thank you again, Fred. I'm sure we'll hear from you. You'll be on again soon. So
Appreciate it. Always have a blast.
And we'll see you next week.